I'm going to fire the horse catcher. I'm just tired and mostly tired. Maisie had like another panic attack thing last night at dark o'clock, and I don't know why, but it woke me up, and like I couldn't.
Why is your dog so special?
I don't know. Don't know, but I'm very tired now, so
I'm sorry.
it's fine.
I canceled class on Monday. Don't tell my boss. Although it was a very productive day for me because I've been living in a shithole of a house. And I Marie Kondoed our bathroom,
Yay.
did all of my laundry, and started on the kitchen.
Yay.
Which have not finished that yet, but
Yeah.
I've been doing dishes for 2 days now.
Yeah.
Two days.
Yeah. Yeah, yesterday.
They're mostly mine. I'm not complaining about my roommates. It's
Yeah,
a me
no.
problem. We're
Yeah.
all just very messy and we're never home.
Yeah. And when you are home, you don't want to clean because you're never
Yeah,
home.
when I'm home, I want to be in bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm ready to go now, by the way.
Okay. Does everybody know when they're going?
Yes, I looked at the thing and I'm going to keep looking at the thing.
I'm after
Okay.
Shannon. That's all.
Yes.
We need to have like a major meeting about a ending, because that's the thing that's bothering me.
Okay, we can. I don't care. Okay. Hello, friends. You are listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive. I'm Shannon.
I'm Shelby.
And I'm Hannah.
Thank you! Yay! Yay! Okay. So, yeah, we're all tired, which is great. Let me think. For
It'll be a
announcements?
quick 25-minute episode.
No, my notes are 11 pages long. It will not be a
Oh,
quick
God.
25-minute episode. So, for announcements, I think we ended up getting... We had our live stream event last weekend. I think we actually ended up with $260 total.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was worried that we weren't gonna...
Yeah, which, like, isn't bad for...
No.
Yeah, so... Yeah, it was really fun.
For a couple of tiny podcasts
Yeah,
who
exactly.
don't do anything, that's pretty good.
Exactly. Yeah, it was super fun. Wouldn't mind doing something like that again in the future. So, although we did find out when we were trying to set it up that you can only have 2 people co-host an Instagram Live. So that was fun to find out while we were doing it. Yeah, that was fun. We fixed it, but that was annoying.
That makes it really difficult when we all live on, like, opposite ends of the country.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that was a problem. But, like, it all worked out. It was fine. Do either of you have any announcements? Because I kind of have an announcement / spiel, but it goes into my topic, so I'm not going to do it until we're done with
This
all the
comes
other
out
ones.
after Election Day, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to say 2 things. One, on the West Wing reunion episode, which if you have HBO or HBO Max, I highly recommend you watching. Oh, who the fuck is calling me? No, I can't substitute tomorrow. Sorry. I'm a substitute teacher. Sometimes. And also, I have 2 other jobs. Anyway. What was I saying? Oh, Lin-Manuel Miranda gives a very nice, speech about why you shouldn't be afraid of the outcome on election night. Because since there are a record number of people doing mail-in votes, the election decision might take a couple of days to get the actual result. So don't freak out on election night if something seems to be going catastrophically wrong, because it might not be correct. And also, I believe, was it Wisconsin today?
Oh,
Yes.
God, did you see
Yeah,
that?
first of all,
Yes.
fuck Wisconsin. That's
well, no,
such
fuck them
bullshit.
and fuck the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court
it
is
was
the
the
one
Supreme
who
Court.
agreed
And
with
also,
it.
I'm so over everything. But
Seriously.
anyway, so don't freak out on election night if things seem to be going bad. My other piece of business is I will be moving out of this country if we get 4 more years of Trump. And that's not even a joke. I know I laughed,
Yeah.
but I'm seriously, goodbye. This is it. I'm out. I'll find a nice Canadian
Yeah.
to marry.
Shelby, did you have an announcement? Because Hannah's kind of tied in with my little thing anyway, so.
Nope.
Okay, so with the election night thing, like, election night is an invention by television, basically. Like, it's not really a thing. Like, we do not get full results until several weeks after the election. It's just
It's true.
televisions announce the winners the day after.
It's
like, sometimes
it's
they're
based
right.
on polling data, and it's based on the
Projections.
results that they do have.
Yeah, and it's based on
it's all-
projected results.
yeah, exactly.
We are not going to know. I don't have any money to bet, but if I did, I would bet we're not going to know the night of. I don't think we're going to know the night of who won or who is projected to win. I really, truly don't, just because there are so many mail-in votes. With the mail-in votes, though, those are mostly Democratic votes.
Yeah, I was going to say it's already
So-
incredibly skewed because
Yeah, exactly.
all of the Democratic votes... Well, actually, no, because a lot of times they don't count the mail-in votes until last.
Yes.
So it's going to seem like the Republicans are winning for a long, long time.
Yes.
But then once all of the mail-in votes are counted, it's going to change quite dramatically.
It will. I mean, it's going to be
just so everyone knows.
a very, very close election.
Yes, indeed.
And just, yeah, that goes into my spiel here. So, you
Why don't we
guys...
just start a political podcast?
I don't want to do that.
I would have actually really liked it.
I mean, we can do it if you really want to,
Y'all
but
two
like,
can,
No, it's
but I'm
fine.
gonna
Yeah.
tap out of that one.
Like I said, like about, what are we on? 8 minutes ago, I really just want to be Sam Seaborn from The West Wing. And that was the only reason why I took the LSATs. Did not do very well.
Yeah.
Didn't study, so it's okay.
Yeah.
I gave up on that dream. It's fine.
yeah. I mean, I technically did too, because I'm not going to be an attorney, but what are you going to do? So this is just my spiel. I wrote it last night because I made the mistake of looking at polls and I got a lot of anxiety. And so this overall is just like a self-care kind of a spiel, but like just stay with me. So yeah, as you all know, because you are listening to it a week ahead of us, this comes out the day after Election Day. You know, as of right now, we're recording this a week before Election Day. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, for all we know, one of them is going to drop dead tomorrow, and then the whole thing's just going to be going to shit. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen.
And Kamala Harris will be the president.
I don't,
you see that
actually,
that's what
I
they called
don't
her?
know. We literally don't know what would happen in that case, because it's never
I know,
happened.
but didn't you hear what they called her on SNL?
No, I didn't see
Mamala Harris. Because she came in and broke up their fight in the... Whatever, it doesn't matter.
it.
Everyone keep going.
Okay. So yeah, I'm starting to feel, I don't want to call it a full-blown panic, but I can't look at polls or anything because I get an anxiety attack because I'm just like terrified of what's going to happen. So, just in the event that the result isn't what we want, I thought it might be helpful just for me, and I probably should have posted, like, not posted, but asked you guys to contribute to this as well, but I did this at like 10 o'clock last night and then didn't think about it until just now. I put together some tips on how to do some self-care following this, and it will be like specifically bad election result self-care. Just because, like, I don't know how old everybody is who's listening. I don't know what everybody's political party is who's listening. Obviously, I don't know who voted last time, but I'm sure we have some listeners who were not as politically involved last time, and so they haven't gone through the heartbreak that we did.
Or maybe you were too young to even
Or maybe
vote,
they were too young,
that's
exactly.
fine.
So, like, we don't know. So yeah, I just put together some tips from someone who has been through this before. And I'll try to go through these fairly quickly. So, like, the first one, and this is...
Can I say something right before you do this?
Yes.
Last election cycle, I just want everyone to know that I got so upset at what was being said on CNN that I actually broke a finger because I punched my couch.
Yep.
Anyway, keep going. So, practice self-care. Don't take your rage out on your wooden-sided couch because that's stupid.
Yeah. The first, and I think most important, and I think this is important no matter what, stay away from people who are going to gloat that the Democrats lost the election. They do not understand why we're upset. They do not understand why, like, what is at stake. And if they do understand, they don't care. Just limit your contact with them as much as you can. I know that sometimes that's hard, but just do it. It'll be better for your own mental health and your own self-care, just to not deal with assholes who are making fun of you for being upset. Because I had to deal with that a lot last time with some family members, and it was horrible.
And people will use this time, when you are upset and vulnerable, to make fun of you and kick you while you're down.
Exactly.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Going along with that, try to stay away from social media. I'm going to fail at that. I already know that because of how I'm nosy and I need to know what's going on all the time because I have anxiety. I'm going to try anyway, but, you know, whatever. Also kind of with that, so, like, I know for some people this may be more of an issue than with others, but, like, for some people, Facebook is, like, people in their families may take it way too personally if you are not friends with them on Facebook. One way to get around that is I have several family members whose stuff I've unfollowed them on Facebook, but I'm still friends with them. That way, if I do see them in person, they don't interrogate me about why I'm not friends with them anymore, because they don't know that I don't see their shit. Just as a tip.
What I do with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, like, the moment a person on my Facebook feed, like, irritates me or posts something where I'm like, okay, clearly we're just not gonna get along anymore, but it's someone that I know if I were to unfriend them, it would cause drama that I just don't have the mental energy to deal with. I just, like, you just go to their Facebook page and you can, like, unfollow them versus unfriend them.
Yeah. It's a good way to sneakily...
So nice.
Yeah, it's so nice. It's a great way to, like, sneakily take care of yourself while giving the impression that you don't hate that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one, it's gonna sound melodramatic, but, like, I'm sure a lot of people feel me on this. Like, let yourself, like, grieve. Because I know last time, like, a lot of people, including myself, felt like we were, like, in mourning. It was very unsettling. Just let yourself feel it, you know? It's just better in the long... At least
you're allowed to have
me.
emotions, and
Exactly.
you're allowed to feel sad and
Exactly.
bad and upset about
Exactly.
what has happened.
And with that, you know, do your version of, like, normal self-care in, I don't want to say traumatic, but in negative situations. So whether that's, like, retreating from everyone and, like, just sitting in your bathtub with a hot bath all day, or if it's, like, getting together with friends to get drunk and commiserate, or even if it's just, like, listening to an audiobook or going for a walk, whatever it is, do it. And do not let people make you feel bad for needing to do it. That applies to always, but especially right now. And then if you're like me and you take a hands-on approach to literally every problem that comes your way, channel your feelings into some kind of an action. That way it feels more productive and you're not just sitting there, sitting on your hands feeling helpless. Yeah, you know,
Start watching for... if this all happens again, there will be marches, there will be protests.
Yeah.
Start looking for those in your communities. Start making signs, start making groups, start making plans to protest, because we do live in a authoritarian government, and I'm not saying that lightly. I actually believe that.
We do live in an authoritarian government at the moment.
Yes.
Protest is a huge thing you can do to help, like, just to, I don't even want to say for your own motives it'll help you feel productive, but if that's how you have to frame it, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Busy hands.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're not that kind of a person, that is completely and totally fine. You know, some
if you're
people...
an indoor kind of a cat,
yeah,
you can give to organizations, and if you have money, you can help support people that way.
Yep.
Or just do your own thing. You know, like shut off, like Shannon said.
If you need to turn off, turn off. You know, if you want to do things, if you're an indoor cat and you still want to be some kind of productive, you know, reach out to your Congress members and see what support they need from you. You know, maybe write an open letter, plan some kind of a writing campaign. Just, you know, there are so many ways that you can become involved without having to leave the house, which is great for so many reasons. And then, like, this is the last one, and it's the most important to me, other than the don't talk to Trump supporters. Just remember that, like, whatever you're feeling after this, you're not alone in it. You have friends and your family and your found family, and you have people in your corner. Like, don't let this, like, destroy you and, like, feed off of spite. And don't let it destroy you, and just fight it and have those people in your corner to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel like you have anyone in your corner, we're in your corner.
Yep.
And reach out.
Yeah, seriously.
Always reach out.
Yeah. I mean, that was basically my next point, was our DMs are always open. Especially mine, because as I've said, I have anxiety about not answering phone messages.
I just don't know how to answer it is the problem. Like, what button do I push? I'm not entirely sure.
You know, and I personally have a pretty high emotional burden threshold for other people's problems, if that makes sense. Like, I can help people with a decent amount before I get tapped out. Yeah, before I get tapped out, I have a pretty deep well there. So yeah. Yeah, and then, like, I am only bringing this up because I'm the kind of person who I plan for the worst always, because that's just how I am. I would rather plan for the worst and be pleasantly surprised than have it go the other way around. You know, for all I know, everything's gonna turn out maybe not fully okay, but in a better position than we are now. And, you know, this is just me guessing. We have a pretty good chance of keeping the House. I don't think the House is going to flip. We have a decent chance of flipping the Senate. And even if Trump still goes and wins the election, but we flip the Senate, that will be so important for us.
Can I say one thing about my senator right now?
Yeah.
I'm actually incredibly proud of Susan Collins right now, because she didn't vote
no.
for Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah,
but also
she only did
Susan
that
Collins.
to, like, because she knows that she's losing in Maine. That's the only reason why she did it.
Yeah, Sarah Gideon hopefully is going to win.
Yeah, but yeah, like, I'm not gonna say what I think is going to happen just because I don't know.
And also, I really feel like I jinxed the last election. Sorry, everyone.
We
it was
all
my
did.
fault.
No.
Well, here's what I did. I casted my vote, and then I called my mom, and I was like, I just voted for the first female president. And then I got drunk on my friend's couch that night because
God, I know. I was with you. It was horrible. Just last time, and that's the other thing I have noticed about the polls this time. They're being a lot more careful with their wording of things. They're saying, like, there's a blank in blank chance of all of these different events happening, and they're mapping out many, many more events than last time, whereas last time is literally Trump has a 10% chance of winning the election, or whatever the hell it was. It was a very low number, though. Yeah. They're being much more careful. It was really treated like a joke,
time. And it wasn't a joke.
People were not taking it seriously. And, like, yeah, Hannah, because I was with you whenever we watched the election at your house.
Yes.
And I remember...
Was that my house?
Yeah, I was at your house. Like, your house on, Lombard.
Lombard Street. Yeah, but I didn't live there at the time.
Oh. Well.
We just went over there.
We were there. Yeah. Either way,
I know. We went over there, but I didn't live there.
Okay. I thought you did. I don't remember.
No.
Oh, yeah, we'd already graduated. That was when I was working nights. Yeah, that was when I was working nights, which really didn't help anything. But yeah, like, we started off
nights. I was, like, suffering from an ulcer and in grad school, and then like everyone else at that party was drunk and sad.
Yeah, it started off so well, and then as the night progressed, we were like,
a good party.
We just were in a room with a bunch of gay women who were afraid of losing their rights, and it was just so sad. Oh, so bad. That's another thing. Watch the election with people. Do not sit by yourself and watch it. Don't do it.
I think
Which, like, at this point,
I think my mom's gonna be here.
Y'all
for
have
that.
already done it, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, so that kind of leads into my actual topic. So, like, just elections generally. So, because this episode comes out the day after the election, I wanted to pick a topic within, like, the political realm, and I wanted to focus on a political issue where the person who, like, did the bad thing actually, like, faced consequences for it, because I feel like we haven't seen that in a very long time. And so you guys can go
open
ahead.
the thing?
Yes, you can open everything. We're talking about Watergate, and I'm sorry.
Yes! I literally just got chills. Oh my god!
Okay, I'm glad that you're not mad
I really
at me.
think I should have done a political... No.
Dude,
Okay, here's... I should
Do
have
we want to
started
do a political
podcast without you guys.
Do you want to do a political
No,
podcast?
no one's gonna want to do it with me.
I'll do it with you.
No, that's too much
No.
homework.
That's true. We already do one.
It's too much homework. I'll just...
It is.
Maybe... for my VSEs, maybe I'll just do...
Yeah, you can do political
Perfect.
shit.
Okay, fucking
Yeah.
great. All right,
There
beautiful.
we go.
When's my next one?
Okay.
I'll start planning.
Yes. Okay, so...
Talk about how the Electoral College is garbage!
Don't even... We've gotten so close to getting started on that for the last 4 episodes. We don't need to do that
It's
right
garbage.
now. It's garbage.
It's garbage. Let's do it. Let's fight it.
Okay, so my sources...
Shit, this is long.
I'm going to run through my sources real quick.
Okay.
Shockingly, as always, the first one is Wikipedia. I have
What?
several articles from the Washington Post, which is why we now have a Washington Post subscription, because I literally needed it to do this. I have stuff from the FBI, CNN, the Senate Archives, archives.gov, the Miller Center, which is a like a presidential research center out of University of Virginia, I believe. I have stuff from the Nixon Presidential Library, Pew Research, and the Gerald Ford Presidential Library. So, I am going to do my best to stick to a timeline, but I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. If you have a question or if you get confused, tell me. Not because, like, this on its own isn't, like, difficult to comprehend. It's just that there are 25 different white men involved, and so it just gets confusing as to who had what job. So just tell me if something gets confused, or if something gets confusing, or something that I said doesn't make sense. I tried to be...
I can explain every if you ask me, like, what they are in the president's cabinet, I can tell you what they do. Based on what their jobs are in The West Wing, which is my absolute favorite TV show that I started rewatching this week.
Yeah. So yeah, before we actually jump in, what do you guys know about Watergate, just so I know?
I know that, actually, Shelby, you go first, because
Yeah.
that's kind of stupid.
It was a huge scandal.
Yes.
And isn't that... It was Nixon, right?
Yes.
And isn't that when he got... Did he get impeached?
No. We will
No,
get to
that's
that.
right. Yeah,
because
yeah.
he-
But he did get, like, in a lot of trouble for it. And it
Yes.
was like a leak of information?
Kind of.
So the
It's
Watergate
been
is a hotel.
long
We're going to get
time.
into that. Yes.
That's where
Since I
the
took AP US
DNC
history.
had all of their
Okay, Hannah, if you know
information.
all of it, then you just need to
I know
stop.
everything about it.
Okay, then you
I'm
need to
not even
stop.
joking. I love politics.
Okay,
I'll
then
shut
you
up.
need to stop.
I hate politics, so...
Okay.
But I love that part
Also-
from Forrest Gump where he's like, I think the lights are off over there.
Also, I just want to give a slight, like, I have been having really bad vertigo for the last 2 days, and I am
Yes.
extremely nauseous.
Okay.
So if I don't talk much, that is why I'm
That's okay. Yeah.
trying not to puke.
Yeah, it's all good. Okay. So before we actually get into what happened, I'm just going to give y'all some context, which is on the second slide. I just thought this was so great because they thought 20,000 Americans dying was bad. Just thought that was a pretty stark contrast to how we are now. We're at what, 225 now? 225,000?
Honestly,
230?
Lucy got exposed to it at her work the other day, and I burst into tears because I
Yeah.
thought my mom, dad, and
Yeah.
maybe 3 of my sisters were going to die. But they're all
Yeah,
good. Everyone
that's
tested
good.
negative. We're good.
Okay, so this is just a political cartoon from, I think, 1970. So yeah, this whole thing centers around the 1972 presidential election. Nixon was running for re-election against Democrat George McGovern. We're still in the Vietnam War. And this was the first election since the ratification of the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. So we have a lot more voters than we used to. Vietnam was still not popular because it was never really popular, but it wasn't like a death knell for Nixon, you know? It wasn't like that was not... It was contentious, but not to a career-killing level. Okay?
Yeah, because it was just kind of bad for everyone, so
Yeah,
it wasn't, like,
and they didn't
specifically bad for
blame-
one person.
Yeah, and they didn't blame Nixon specifically for it at the time.
Yeah, it was
I
just
think
like
we kind
everyone
of do
was
that.
having a bad time
Yeah,
about it.
we kind of do that more now, I think, just because we have this gift of hindsight, but it's at the time that wasn't the issue. So,
Yeah.
what actually happened with Watergate is there was a burglary, which I actually put this further down in my notes, but I'm going to explain it now. So, a burglary is not the same thing as a theft or a robbery. A burglary is essentially breaking and entering. So it's illegally entering a building with the intent to commit some further illegal act. Which I've never actually been told what burglary is, so I thought it was theft. And so when I started doing this...
No, it's like when you have your foot in the window of someone's house,
Yeah.
you're a burglar, but you haven't stolen anything, so you're not a thief.
Exactly. I didn't know that. And so when I did this, I was like,
Fun fact.
they didn't steal anything. That's why it doesn't matter. So, if we could go to the next slide. This is the Watergate complex, which we will get into. So, on June 17th, 1972, what I'm about to read you is a quote from an article that came out on June 18th in the Washington Post called "5 Held in Plot to Bug Democrats' Office Here," because they were still phrasing things like that. Okay. 5 men, one of whom said he is a former employee of the Central Intelligence Agency, were arrested at 2:30 a.m. yesterday in what authorities described as an elaborate plot to bug the offices of the Democratic National Committee here. And by here, they mean here in Washington, D.C. 3 of the men were native-born Cubans, and another was said to have trained Cuban exiles for guerrilla activity after the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion. They were surprised at gunpoint by 3 plainclothes officers of the Metropolitan Police Department in a 6th-floor office at the plush Watergate, 2600 Virginia Avenue Northwest, where the Democratic National Committee occupies the entire floor. There was no immediate explanation as to why the 5 suspects would want to bug the Democratic National Committee offices, or whether or not they were working for any other individuals or organizations, end quote. So basically, 5 men were arrested while attempting to plant listening devices in and around the Democratic National Committee, or DNC, headquarters at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. So
What a shitty CIA agent to get
Yeah.
caught by 3
I know,
plainclothes
right?
cops.
I know!
Like, wow.
Yeah. So the complex itself is made up, I put was, it's still like a functioning complex. It's made up of 6 buildings and included office buildings, a hotel, and some apartments. The DNC occupied an entire floor in the Watergate office building. So on September 15th, so June, July, August, September, 3 months later, this is from a CNN Fast Facts article about the scandal. For their parts in the break-in at the DNC headquarters, Bernard Baker, Virgilio Gonzalez, E. Howard Hunt, G. Gordon Liddy, Eugenio Martinez, James McCord, and Frank Sturgis were indicted by a grand jury. And
I'm sorry, real quick.
Yes.
The news article said like 4 Cuban people, right?
Cuban-born nationals, right?
Yes.
So that means that
I think they may have just misreported it initially.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they may have misreported it.
I mean, I don't know much about Cuban names, but only 2 of those sounded remotely.
Yeah, I think they misreported. And honestly, those 2 are like never implicated in anything else regarding the rest of Watergate. I'm still not entirely sure. I didn't get into why they were even involved. I think they were just hired in order to get involved. I didn't really get into it because there was so much other stuff to get into.
Blame this on like Cuban nationals.
I don't think so necessarily, because they had been involved in like guerrilla activity training, so they probably were supposedly. So they were probably very useful. To this act, but I didn't get into it just because there was so much other shit to get into.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was not that it isn't worth the time. I just didn't feel like trying to find it because there's there was just so much other stuff. Yeah, you're right though.
Consistency, I noticed.
Yeah. Which again, it may have just been misreported. I have no idea. But yeah, and I know we already talked about what a grand jury is, but just as a refresher, grand juries only say, yes, this person can be prosecuted. That's all it says. They haven't been charged with anything yet. They kind of have. They haven't been found guilty of anything yet. It's basically the grand jury has told the prosecutor, you can give these people charges. So if we go to the next slide, this is an election map from 1972. On November 7th, 1972,
Oh, wow.
yeah, Nixon won in a landslide. He took 49 states and 60.7% of the popular vote. And I think, I meant to put this in here, he won by the biggest margin in history until Reagan. Like, it was by a lot. And I mean, you can see he took every state except Massachusetts. Like, he took Minnesota.
Good job, assholes. You did something right.
I know. Like, he took Minnesota. Do you know how hard it is for Republicans to take Minnesota? Like, that doesn't happen.
No. Minnesota is like,
They're blue.
they're so blue.
Yeah.
And always have been and always will be.
Yeah.
Look at that little corner. What's that
It's
down
DC.
there?
Oh,
No,
the
no,
corner
in,
is
like, Kentucky.
libertarian.
That is the
Yeah, that's
libertarian
Kentucky.
person.
Oh.
I think Kentucky, maybe at the time, he took enough of this map is like popular vote, not electoral.
Yeah, electoral.
Yeah. So
That's so dramatic.
there was enough, like, in that tiny corner of Kentucky to give him, he got 1.8% of the entire popular vote, so he got this little bitty tiny corner of Kentucky.
He must have
That's
been from near
well,
there.
it doesn't matter. People have already voted by this point, so it doesn't. Never mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't split the vote.
Yeah, seriously. We're shouting into the void at this point, but
I know. Please,
Yeah.
but go back in time and don't vote for a libertarian.
I know.
Just,
Okay.
just this once, please.
Okay, so yeah.
Okay.
Nixon won, biggest margin of a win until Reagan a few years later. So on January 30th, 1973, this is again from that CNN article, former FBI agent Liddy and former CIA employee McCord, who was the security director of the Committee to Re-elect the President, or CREEP for short, I know,
Sorry.
are found guilty of conspiracy, burglary, and bugging DNC headquarters. Hunt, a former CIA operative, and the 4 others involved ended their trials by pleading guilty. And that's it on the burglary itself. So the actual story is the cover-up of it, and that's what we're going to get into now. So if we could go to the next slide. This is James McCord. He was the former CIA employee. So on June 19th, 1972, so this was 2 days after the men were caught, the Washington Post, which I'm going to call WAPO sometimes just because that's easier, they published a story drawing a connection.
Wait, why WAPO? Isn't it WAPO?
WAPO, sure. I just pronounce it, I know, I just pronounce it WAPO because that just makes more sense to me in my head, but
I don't
no, I know, you're right. It's like GIF and GIF. You're right. It's like...
Don't even bring that up in this house.
I know.
No, because apparently I'm wrong, and also you hate the way how I call that candy. But when I'm not going to talk about
You mean racist?
Yeah. I'm not going to get into it.
Okay. Anyway, the Washington Post published a story drawing a connection between one of the arrested men and Nixon's re-election committee, and this article was called Bug Suspect Got Campaign Funds. So this is the quote. A $25,000 cashier's check, apparently earmarked for President Nixon's re-election campaign, was deposited in April in a bank account of one of the 5 men arrested at the break-in at Democratic National Committee headquarters here June 17th. Basically, this proves that one of the burglars, a man named James McCord, was on the payroll of Nixon's re-election committee. And they established this 2 days after they were caught, right? And so on June 20th, which is the day after that, if we can go to the next slide, we're going to get into this scene more later. The White House refused to give a public comment on a, quote, third-rate burglary, but privately, Nixon and his chief of staff discussed how to get the CIA to tell the FBI to back off from the investigation into the burglary. And so, we can go to the next slide. We're going to go through slides pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have like 48 slides.
No, I know.
but-
Well, I tried to get like as many pictures as I
Wow,
could.
look at that 70s hair.
I know. Just because there's so many different...
Beautiful.
There's so many different white guys involved. I wanted to get pictures of them to help you, like, differentiate as best you could. So, like,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. So, yeah, on September 29th, which was... Crap, I meant to write this down. About 2 weeks after the burglars were indicted by the grand jury, So pretty much all of these investigative stories were written by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. I think Bernstein is on the right. Most of the pictures I could find are of them is like now, and they're old, and I literally cannot tell like who is who by comparing it to their younger photos. So yeah, I think Bernstein's on the right. So unless I say otherwise, assume that any I keep wanting to say WAPO. It's not though. Sorry. Story that I referenced was written by then. So they began doing a series of stories on the cover-up and investigation pretty much as they were happening. It's kind of like how the Boston Globe Spotlight team was the one that uncovered like the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal. These guys were like the people doing a lot of the journalistic investigation into Watergate. And so, yeah, on September 29th, they published a story, Mitchell-Controlled Secret GOP Fund. And this is the quote. John N. Mitchell, while serving as U.S. Attorney General, so this guy was Nixon's Attorney General, personally controlled a secret Republican fund that was used to gather information about the Democrats, according to sources involved in the Watergate investigation. Beginning in the spring of 1971, almost a year before he left the Justice Department to become President Nixon's campaign manager on March 1st, Mitchell personally approved withdrawals from the fund, several reliable sources have told the Washington Post, end quote. So this draws a connection between the burglary and the attempted bugging and Nixon. And again, this was in September. And he gets reelected in a landslide in November. I still don't know how the fuck that happened, but it did. So we're not going to the next slide this time. On October 10th, there was another article published called FBI Finds Nixon Aides Sabotaged Democrats. And this is kind of long, so just stick with me. FBI agents have established that the Watergate bugging incident stemmed from a massive campaign of political spying and sabotage conducted on behalf of President Nixon's re-election and directed by officials of the White House and the Committee for the Re-election of the President. The activities, according to information in FBI and Department of Justice files, were aimed at all the major Democratic presidential contenders and, since 1971, represented a basic strategy of the Nixon re-election effort. Quote, intelligence work, end quote, is normal during a campaign and is said to be carried out by both political parties. But federal investigators said what they uncovered being done by the Nixon forces is unprecedented in scope and intensity. They said it included following members of Democratic candidates' families and assembling dossiers on their personal lives, forging letters and distributing them under the candidates' letterheads, leaking false and manufactured items to the press, throwing campaign schedules into disarray, seizing confidential campaign files, and investigating the lives of dozens of Democratic campaign workers. So basically, to sum it up, the FBI, in October, had established that the Watergate incident was part of a massive campaign on Nixon's behalf to sabotage the Democrats running against him. And Nixon and his associates just flatly denied these allegations. And the general public, from what I can tell, they just didn't, it's not that they didn't care, they just didn't think it was that big of a deal, if that makes sense. It just wasn't, it wasn't career ending, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nixon wins in a landslide in November. And then remember that everyone directly involved in the burglary either pleaded or was found guilty on January 30th of 1973. So on April 30th of 1973, I couldn't find a lot of info about like what exactly happened between January and April. But I think it was just that the FBI had gotten enough information to start like threatening prosecution. So on April 30th, 4 of Nixon's top aides resigned. So we have John Dean, who was White House counsel, H.R. Haldeman, who was his chief of staff, John D. Ehrlichman, who was his assistant for domestic affairs, and the Attorney General Richard Kleindienst, I think. So if we can go to the next slide, on May 17th, 1973, which is Allison's birthday.
Oh, she was born in the 70s?
The date. The 17th.
That is also my friend Kitch's birthday.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So on that day, the Senate Select Committee on President Campaign Activities opens hearings into the Watergate incident. The hearings are nationally televised. So I do want to point out, this happened 11 months before the hearings actually opened. I just want to point that out. I think it's crazy, but with everything going on now, it's not that crazy. It just seems odd to me that they would let this slide for almost a year, but whatever. So if we can go to the next slide on May 19th, 1973, which May 9th...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I missed everything you just said, but I just want you to know that the way that the computer was buffering your voice, it was like a little song. It was like... That's all.
Yeah, all I said was that it took them almost a year for hearings to start, which to me seems a little cuckoo, but whatever.
Oh, there's a really good Mountain Goat song. It's not about the Watergate hearings, but it says the word Watergate hearings in it. It's called Dance Music by the Mountain Goats. I believe it's from the album Sunset Trees. I could be wrong.
Okay, so this is not really related
That's
to
fine.
Well, it's not related to Watergate at all, but...
That's fine. We need some tangents.
When we were learning about the Battle of Waterloo in my 10th grade history class, my teacher was... Okay, first of all, we were living in Japan at the time, but my teacher was... it was the military school, so he's an American. But he was this little old man who, like, always wore sweater vests and, like, loved Winnie the Pooh and would talk about how he'd go home every night and, like, dance with his cats or whatever. So, like, looked like Fred Rogers a little bit.
Yeah.
Adorable person. But he did a lot of research into, like, how people study and stuff like that. So we were learning about Waterloo, and he was like, okay, well, the human brain can only focus for about 15 minutes before it needs a break. So it's been 15 minutes, so here, we're going to play Waterloo by ABBA. And so we just listened to that song until it was over, and he was like, okay, now write your papers, okay? We were like, okay.
My client, all she wanted to do the other day was listen to ABBA, and so we, like, drove around singing that. I don't really think she knew any of their music, but it doesn't matter because I know every single song.
Same.
And I had the time of my life. It was amazing.
Every single song.
I get paid $14 an hour to do that. To sing ABBA.
Oh, man. This is also not on topic at all, but I just saw, you guys know about the Nexium cult? And Keith Raniere.
Yeah.
He got sentenced to 120 years in prison. Just now.
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
I read an entire article about the Supermax prison out in Colorado last night. It was a good time.
Ugh. Yeah.
Because that's what I do for fun.
Dude, I spent way too long on... Do you know how many times I've revised my notes for this episode? Because I'm worried that I'm going to fuck it up.
Too many?
Like, so many fucking times. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, so...
You're not getting a grade on this, Shannon.
I know, but it's me. Yeah, so May 19th. So we should be on slide number 9 now.
Yes.
Which... May 19th was my sister's due date, and that is the day that my mother insists is my sister's actual birthday. So, there's that.
Your mother is wrong.
Oh god, it's so bad. She has told complete strangers very confidently that Allie's birthday is May 19th. And then we have to correct her every single time.
Your mom is great.
Oh god. Like, a couple years ago, they were having a family reunion, which I couldn't go to. But she was like, yeah. And my mom's telling me about it. She's like, it's on May 19th. That's Allie's birthday. And I was like, no, it's not. And then she was like, don't tell your sister. And so I immediately told Allison.
Hey, sister, guess what? Mom doesn't love you.
Yep.
She only likes you.
That's a different story.
That's my favorite story ever. Okay. So, on May 19th, former Solicitor General Archibald Cox was appointed as special prosecutor for the case.
I want to name my child Archibald.
It's better than Finavere, so...
Rude. Fenivere's the girl.
Okay,
I
better
do not agree.
in... I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. It's
also,
better
it's
for
not
people
better.
who don't speak Irish.
It's also not better because that's what those fucking, those royals named their kid.
Those
right?
royals.
Well, they named him Archie.
Listen.
And they're the ones who, like, disavowed
It's
the entire monarchy.
I don't care.
Okay.
They're a symbol of oppression.
Okay, well, Meghan Markle was the victim of massive, like, horrible racism. So, like, I don't
I'm talking
blame
about
her
her
for
husband.
anything.
He dressed up as a Nazi for Halloween once.
True. Okay.
So, everyone get off my back. I'm not talking about Meghan Markle. I'm talking about
You said they. Okay. Anyway. Okay, next slide. This is John Dean. So, on June 25th to 29th of 1973, so this is about a year after the break-in, John Dean, who was the former White House counsel who had resigned, he testified before the Senate Select Committee. So on June 3rd, the Washington Post had published a story called Dean Alleges Nixon Knew of Cover-Up Plan, which pretty much explains everything you need to know, but I'm going to go into way too much detail. So this is a quote from the article. Former presidential counsel John W. Dean III, God, he's the third, has told Senate investigators and federal prosecutors that the discussed aspects, it's too many S's, of the Watergate cover-up.
Disgusting aspects.
Of the Watergate cover-up with President Nixon or Mr. Nixon's presence on at least 35 occasions between January and April of this year, according to reliable sources. Dean plans to testify under oath at the Senate's Watergate hearings, regardless of whether he is granted full immunity from prosecution, and he will allege that President Nixon was deeply involved in the cover-up, the sources said. Dean has told investigators that Mr. Nixon had prior knowledge of payments used to buy the silence of the Watergate conspirators and of offers of executive clemency extended in his name, the sources said. Dean has little or no documentary evidence to support his charges against the president, and most of his allegations are based on his own recollection of purported conversations with Mr. Nixon, the sources said. End quote. So, he essentially testified to all of this stuff before the SSC. And then just as a note, because I didn't know where else to put this, but it's important, in April of 1973, it was revealed that that two of the Watergate burglars, Hunt and Liddy, had broken into the office of the psychiatrist of Daniel Ellsberg, who was the former Defense Department analyst who gave the top secret Pentagon Papers to the New York Times. So he was just the Pentagon Papers was this another huge, I don't know if it would be called a scandal, but it was a big whistleblower event. So seeking information to discredit Ellsberg, they found nothing and left undetected. In May, a senator revealed that a young Nixon staffer named Tom Houston had developed a proposal for a domestic espionage office to monitor and harass the opponents of the president. The plan, never implemented, disclosed a, quote, Gestapo mentality. So yeah, cool. I didn't know where to put these because they don't actually play into the overall story of Watergate. Like, you can tell the story without mentioning these two things. I just think it shows other instances of them doing this same kind of behavior, and that the Watergate break-in was not an isolated incident, and that they actually did this fairly regularly. I don't know regularly, but it wasn't uncommon for them to do things like this. So, if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to say that about 15 more times. I'm sorry. So on July 16th, 1973, which July 16th is my birthday, and it was my grandmother's birthday, so she would have been turning 42.
Nice. So into Watergate.
Yeah, so that would have been my grandmother's 42nd birthday. Good for her. So, on that day, former White House aide Alexander P. Butterfield, which is this man here, he revealed to the Watergate committee that Nixon had been secretly recording all of his conversations and meetings in the Oval Office and Cabinet Room, and had been doing so since 1971. So this was probably the most important piece of information that the SSC got, and it completely changed how they were going about this investigation and how they were going about these hearings. So from that day in July until October 20th, there were various court filings and orders which attempted to get Nixon to hand over those tapes, which he just flat out refused to do. At one point, he offered to give them, like, handwritten summaries of the tapes, but Cox, who was the special prosecutor, he just refused to accept them because, those are...
Because it's not the same thing.
That's not even remotely.
They're useless. They are completely and totally useless. And so they thought they were going to have to go to the Supreme Court. And then on October 20th, 1973, if we can go to the next slide, This is what has been referred to as the Saturday Night Massacre. President Nixon ordered the firing of Cox as special prosecutor. Rather than comply, I promise there's a reason I said that. Attorney General Elliot Richardson and Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus resign. Cox is eventually fired by Solicitor General Robert Bork, who would become AG through the resignations of the other men. So this doesn't look good, obviously. I mean, I'm sure we all remember when Trump was attempting to fire Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller.
Yeah, you know what they were calling it?
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to fire the horse catcher. Like, you cannot do that.
I fired the horse catcher.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, these are two headlines from the Washington Post and the New York Times. This was a massive scandal within a scandal. Which, like, honestly, I'm going to get into this later. Up until now, like, there weren't that many scandals like this within the presidency. Like, at all. And so, him doing this was very unprecedented and did not help his image to the SSC and to the general public. So, if we could go to the next slide. On November 1st, 1973... Crap, I meant to look up the pronunciation of this guy's last name. Leon, I think it's Jaworski. I think. It might be just Jaworski, but that's too hard for me to say, so I'm probably going to make that be a V.
It probably is a V.
It probably is.
So proud that I can spell that one. You guys know.
Mike Wazowski.
Mike
Yes.
Wazowski's name. That's not really his name,
No, it's not. That
looks like it.
That's when every time I have to ask you to spell it for me, I'll be like, what's Mike Wazowski's last name?
There's so many Z's.
Yeah. So anyway, Leon Jaworski, he was named the new special prosecutor. And at this point, calls for Nixon's impeachment are growing. Obviously, there's mounting evidence that he was actively involved in covering up this burglary. But there was also evidence that he had misused campaign funds, which is a big no-no. I did not get into that because we were already getting into so much other stuff that I didn't feel like it. Just know, he also misused campaign funds, which, like, you do, like, no. That is, I phrased it as a big no-no. That's, yeah. That alone could have gotten him impeached.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we go to the next slide, this is November 17th. This is his I am not a crook speech. And so this is a video. It's really short, so if y'all want to watch it real quick, you don't have to.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Everyone shh.
But in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
Hannah, let me know whenever you're done.
Okay. It's done.
Okay. Yeah, so, this is available on YouTube if anybody wants to look it up. Yeah, it's a press conference where he denies all allegations against him. And I wrote he attempts to explain the financial discrepancies that have been found. He doesn't. He basically just says that there weren't any. So he basically just denies them, which I think all of us are pretty used to seeing nowadays. So, yeah.
Pretty much.
So, on November 21st, 1973, which is 4 days later, the White House revealed that one of the subpoenaed recordings, which had still not been turned over, was missing 18 minutes of audio. And it wasn't that it was missing. It was drowned out by a loud humming noise. And they...
Don't worry about it. Everyone stop listening. I'm not doing crimes.
Yeah, they couldn't really explain the gap, though a secretary testified that she might have been the cause of, at most, 5 minutes of the missing audio. So that's still 13 minutes. Maybe.
I was going to say 18 minutes of just an unexplained noise is a lot.
It's a lot. It's
like,
so
that's a
much.
long time.
It's so much.
Minutes.
Yeah. So, nothing really came out of that. They're still trying to fight to get him to turn these over. So, on December 31st, 1973, Jaworski, who is the new special prosecutor, reported that 12 more people had pleaded guilty to Watergate-related offenses and that criminal proceedings against 4 other people were in progress. Nixon rejected accusations of wrongdoing and insisted he would stay in office. And so between now and April of 74, there's just more investigating and criminal proceedings. Again, I didn't want to get into every single person who was implicated in this because that would have taken... Hannah, you and I literally could do an entire podcast just on Watergate. Like, there's just so much information.
No, I wouldn't.
What?
I said I would do it, and then I said no, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather spend my time talking about something more interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, not the Watergate isn't interesting. It is incredibly interesting. I just mean...
There's other stuff.
Yeah.
I
I
understand.
would rather rant about a different president.
Exactly. So, on April 30th, 1974... still haven't turned over the tapes. What they did instead was the White House released more than 1,200 pages of edited transcripts of the tapes. So...
Not the same!
Nope. So, these next parts are all from one Washington Post article called President Hands Over Transcripts, because they were going for clarity here. So, the tapes were released in 2 parts. So, the first part. It was released in the morning following a press conference where Nixon announced that they were going to be released. And so this is a quote from the article. The transcripts were in the form of a White House summary of the conversations, in effect an official white paper on the Watergate affair. In all of the thousands of words spoken, the White House summary said, even though they often are unclear and ambiguous, not once does it appear that the President of the United States was engaged in a criminal plot to obstruct justice. And then the second part got released. They were released that afternoon. I would love to have a discussion on the shift in tone here, because it's just breakneck speed how quickly this shifts. So, quote, the conversations show the president discussing at length raising blackmail money, discussing the merits of offering clemency or parole, suggesting how to handle possible perjury or obstruction of justice charges, urging the adoption of a national security defense for potential White House defendants. They are candid beyond any papers ever made public by a president. And this part just made me laugh. Even though the transcripts were edited to remove expletives, they still contain occasional profanities and harsh judgments on individuals. They also contain disclosures of a kind that are certain to inspire even stronger future controversy about Nixon's role. So the White House is saying there's nothing in here that shows that Nixon was involved in this. And then later that day, it is very, very evident that Nixon was in fact involved in this.
Oh my goodness.
Nice spin team.
Yeah,
they sent out.
Yeah. Just the contrast in tone in those 2 chunks I just thought was hysterical. So...
we did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
We, in fact, did everything wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
So on July 24th, 1974, so this is 2 years after the burglary, just to put it in context, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Nixon had to turn over the original recordings of more than 64 conversations. And then 3 days later, the House Judiciary Committee approved 3 articles of impeachment, which were then sent to the House for a vote. And then on July 31st, if we can go to the next slide, the remaining tapes that they had, he had been forced to hand over, reveal a conversation from June 23rd, 1972, that proves the president's knowledge of the cover-up from the beginning. I mentioned earlier how Nixon and his chief of staff discussed trying to get the CIA to get the FBI to back off, right? That's what this tape is. They call it the smoking gun tape. This proves unequivocally that Nixon knew about the cover-up and was actively involved in helping arrange the cover-up. So with this video, it's 6 minutes long. I've listened to it a couple times to try to figure this out. There's no good place for us to just jump in and out. So we can watch it if you guys want to. If you don't want to.
I would love to.
Okay, cool. Go ahead and just watch it then. I would recommend turning on the closed captions because it's kind of hard to understand them because the audio quality isn't very good.
Okay, just tell us when.
Whenever you want. Yeah.
That's fine. On the investigation, the Democratic break-in thing, we're back in the problem area because the FBI is not under control because Gray doesn't exactly know how to some films for this guy Parker, and the films had pictures of Democratic National Committee letterhead documents and things. So there's things like that that are filtering in. Mitchell came up with yesterday, and John Dean analyzed very carefully last night and concurs now with Mitchell's recommendation that the only way to solve this, and we're set up beautifully to do it, in that the only network that paid any attention to last night was NBC, who did a massive story on the Cuban thing and all. But the way to handle this now is for us to have Walters call Pat Gray and just say, stay the hell out of this. There's some business here we don't want you going any further on. That's not an unusual development. And that would take care of it. He doesn't want to. Pat does want to. He doesn't know how to, and he doesn't have any basis for doing it. Given this, he will then have the basis. He'll call Mark Bell in, and the two of them, and Mark Bell wants to cooperate because he's ambitious. They'll call them in and say, we've gotten the signal across the river to put the hold on this. And that'll fit rather well because the FBI agents who are working the case at this point feel that's what it is the CIA. But they're tracing the money to them. Well, they've traced it to a name that they haven't got to the guy yet. Somebody here, Ken Dahlberg. And the fellow Ken Dahlberg said he gave $25,000 in Minnesota. And the check went directly in to this guy Parker. Maybe he's if he did it, from the committee, it's fan, it is. It's directly traced one. There's some more through some Texas people that went to the Mexican bank, which they can also trace through the Mexican bank. They'll get their names today. And there's no way that I'm just thinking if they don't cooperate, what do they say? They were approached by the Cubans, and that's what Dahlberg has to say, and the Texans too. If they will, but then we're relying on more and more people all the time. It's the problem. And they'll stop if we take this other side. And they seem to feel the thing to do is to get them to stop. Right, fine. And they say the only way to do that is the White House instruction. And that it's got to be to Helms and what's his name? Walters. And the proposal would be that Irwin and I call in. All right, fine. And say, how do you call them in? Well, we protected Helms on one hell of a lot of things. That's what everything starts. This is Hunt. That'll uncover a lot of legal net scandals, a lot of things. And then we just feel that this would be very detrimental to have this thing going further. This involves the Cubans and a lot of hanky-panky that we have nothing to do with ourselves. What the hell did Mitchell know about this thing? I think so. I don't think he knew the details, but I think he did know how he handled all the dollar and Texas and so forth. Well, who was the asshole that did that? He said, Liddy, is that the fellow? He must be a little nuts. Yeah. He just isn't well screwed on, is he? Isn't that a problem? No, he was under pressure, apparently, to get more information, and as he got more pressure, he pushed the people harder to move harder on pressure from Mitchell, apparently. Mitchell is trying to keep me honest and say what I do stuff, yeah. All right, I understand it all. We won't say yes, Mitchell and the rest. Thank God it was Colson. The FBI interviewed Colson yesterday. They determined that would be a good thing to do. To have him take an interrogation, which he did, and that the FBI guys working the case had concluded that there were one or two possibilities. One, that this was a White House. They don't think there's anything about the election committee. They think it was either a White House operation that had some obscure reasons for it, non-political, or was the Cubans and the CIA. And after their interrogation of Colson yesterday, they concluded it was not White House, so they're now convinced it's a CIA thing. So the CIA turnoff would. Well, I must have turn off this. I must have that. They don't want you to. You call him.
So just let me know when y'all are done.
I'm done.
Okay.
Done.
Okay. So, do we have any thoughts?
They're gonna think it was a White House operation. It was a White House operation!
Shit!
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no room for interpretation in there. There's just not. And it's just so shocking, the fact that these people... I mean, to be fair, Nixon was the only one who knew that this was being recorded. But the fact that he would even record these is
I know.
shocking
Yeah, that's
to
the
me.
part that I don't get. Like, even if you're recording everything, like, why wouldn't
Why?
you
Just why?
stop the recordings
Yeah.
when you're discussing?
I don't know. I wish I could
I
tell
don't get
you.
it.
I don't think I don't want to say I don't think anybody knows. It didn't come up in any of the research I did, so I have no idea at all.
Was it so that he could, like, if he were to get caught, he could, like, implicate other people? Or, like...
I don't know. I don't know his motivation behind recording stuff. Well, because he started recording a year before this even happened.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
so...
he started recording in 71.
Was the dude just hella paranoid?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Like,
Ugh. Yeah.
so strange.
Yeah, just a couple things from that. So, you know, I don't know how much of the names y'all are retaining, but he mentioned Mitchell, who was the AG. He mentioned John Dean, who testified to the SSE. He mentioned Pat Gray. So Pat Gray was the head of the FBI at the time, and he actually resigned after it was discovered that he had destroyed documents that came from Howard Hunt's safe, and he was another conspirator. And then Charles Colson, who was that guy that they were talking about at the end, he was an attorney and like a political advisor, and he had been Nixon's like counsel up until 1970. So yeah, he ended up being a little bit more involved in the Pentagon Papers, which was again that thing with Daniel Ellsberg. He actually ended up serving time in prison because he attempted to defame Daniel Ellsberg. So, yeah, it's shocking just how revealing this tape is.
Has always been.
Yeah. So then just a little bit more info, which again, this came out at about the same time. I don't know when they found out about this information, but I'm just going to put it in here because it kind of fits in with the flow of the timeline here. So they eventually discovered the plan for the wiretapping came from Liddy and Ehrlichman, who were two of his Nixon's aides, I guess. It was eventually approved by John Dean, the former Attorney General Mitchell, and CREEP acting president Jeb Magruder. This was presented...
I'm president of the CREEP.
This was presented on January 27th of 72, so about 6 months before the actual... Well, 5 months before the actual burglary. Some of this is in that tape, but it's not, like, explicit, so if you don't know that information already, it's not going to stick out to you. The plan included burglarizing the DNC headquarters in order to photograph campaign documents and install listening devices in telephones. McCord and Hunt were two former CIA officers who carried it out in May. So they had actually done a separate burglary in May. The one in June is when they got caught. So they'd actually already done this, which I thought was interesting because you really only hear about the one where they got caught. I also just want to mention that recordings and transcripts of the most damning tapes can be found online at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library website.
I cannot believe they put that
No,
in his presidential
they are
library.
so open about it. They're just like, yeah, here's all the tapes. Here's all the really, really, really bad tapes.
Well, I mean, at this point, like, everyone already knows about it. It's in all of our history books. Like,
Exactly.
might as well.
Exactly.
But it is kind of funny that it's like the Richard Nixon Presidential Library, and it's like, here he is,
Yeah.
plotting
Here
things.
he is, plotting a massive
Ruining
cover-up.
Things.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Being illegal, it's cool.
I would just like to say
Yes.
that if you ever get the chance in your life, everyone should try to visit the JFK Presidential Library. I literally burst into tears walking through it. It's so powerful and wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay. Yeah. I thought about using these recordings. You okay?
I dropped some paint
Oh,
on
no.
my desk. I'm painting a picture of
Yes.
Madeline. Oh, now it's stuck to my nail, which I just painted.
Hannah's on the struggle bus right now.
Bad day. We don't want to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah, I thought about using these recordings more extensively, but it would have been more trouble than it was worth because it's so many tapes, and I was just like, we're just gonna do this one. If y'all really want to listen, and or read them, they're on the website for the Richard Nixon Presidential Library. So if we go to the next slide, I think this is the last video. So on August 9th, 1974, Nixon resigned, and that's what this video is. So
That's right, he resigned.
yes, he resigned. So if we want to watch this,
Like, I knew it ended in him, like, leaving, but
yeah. So this
Leaving
video is
shortly.
like not even 4 minutes, so it's not anything crazy. I just wanted to include it for context.
Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shape the history of this nation. Each time I have done so to discuss with you some matter that I believe affected the national interest. In all the decisions I have made in my public life, I have always tried to do what was best for the nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort. As long as there was such a base, I felt strongly that it was necessary to see the constitutional process through to its conclusion, that to do otherwise would be unfaithful to the spirit of that deliberately difficult process and a dangerously destabilizing precedent for the future. But with the disappearance of that base, I now believe that the constitutional purpose has been served, and there is no longer a need for the process to be prolonged. I would have preferred to carry through to the finish, whatever the personal agony it would have involved. And my family unanimously urged me to do so. But the interests of the nation must always come before any personal considerations. From the discussions I have had with congressional and other leaders, I have concluded that because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require. I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
Okay, let me know when you're done.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounded very accusatory.
Yeah, he's very unhappy.
I've never done anything wrong,
Yep.
and I don't want anything bad to happen
I
to the
just
presidency,
wanted
so.
everything for America.
Yeah.
I just wanted the country
I'm
to
doing
be
this
great.
For
But
you.
Yeah.
Congress doesn't have the best interests in mind, and therefore I'm going to resign.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what that sounded like.
I mean, that's what he's saying. So yeah, he resigned August 9th, 1974. That smoking gun tape that we listened to, it completely shredded his credibility for obvious reasons.
Well,
I wonder
Duh.
why.
Yeah. And so it was either resign or be impeached and probably removed. So Nixon was the first and, as of right now, is still the only president in U.S. history to resign. We've only had 3 presidents be impeached, and those were Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, but none have been removed. I do want to go through the impeachment process.
Impeachment doesn't mean removal.
No, I want to go through that process real quick, because I know we just did this we literally went through an impeachment a year ago. But 1, it's really fucking confusing, and 2, we have listeners who are not Americans, and it's really fucking confusing. So I want to explain it. So basically, in the U.S. with impeachment basically means that, because we have the 2 chambers of Congress, the House and the Senate. Impeachment means that the House thinks that the president should be charged with some kind of not even a crime, some kind of act that makes him unfit to now be the president. It's usually high crimes and misdemeanors, which is insanely vague. Andrew Johnson was some weird 1800s bullshit. Congress passed a law to keep the Secretary of War in place, and then Johnson ignored it and replaced him. And so they got mad and impeached him, basically, is what happened.
Jackson?
Johnson, not Jackson. Andrew Jackson was not impeached. Johnson.
I was really confused. I thought you said Jackson.
I may have.
Sorry,
I don't know.
My bad.
Yeah, and then Clinton was impeached for perjury, not for sexually assaulting Monica Lewinsky. That is something that gets brought up a lot. He was impeached for perjury.
He lied.
Because he lied under oath. It had nothing to do with his actual actions against Monica Lewinsky. It had everything to do with him lying under oath. That is a distinction that I don't think gets made often enough, and it infuriates me. And then Trump was impeached for... God, I don't even fucking remember. What was he impeached for? This just happened, and I can't even remember. Honestly.
God,
specifically what it was.
I don't even know.
Was it the Ukraine stuff? Yeah.
I don't know. He's done so much.
It could have been anything.
No, he tried to bribe threaten Ukraine into... No, I literally just looked it up. He withheld military aid from Ukraine in order to influence Ukraine to announce an investigation into Joe Biden. That's what it was.
God, what is...
Sure.
Yeah. So...
Okay.
Yeah. The way impeachment works is that when some kind of an act has been committed by the president that we think makes, and I'm going to say him because we have not had a female president, that makes him, unable to continue to be president, the House, they vote on it. So they have articles of impeachment drawn up. It's not a trial. It is an indictment. It is the same thing as charging someone in a criminal court is the best analogy to it. It's not saying you committed something. It is not saying you are guilty of something. It is saying we think you could be removed from office because of these things, and we want this process to get started. And then it gets kicked over to the Senate. The Senate has a trial, and they decide whether or not the president gets removed. As I said, it's never happened. You need, I believe, a 2/3 majority in order to do it. So especially nowadays, if you do not have if you do not have a 2/3 majority of your party or of either party in the Senate, it isn't going to happen. It's just not. It's just never happened. So the thing with Nixon was, he most likely would have been removed. I mean, he mentioned, as you guys brought up, he mentioned how, Congress, I don't have the support of Congress anymore. Some people also should have, I feel like it's been implied Nixon is a Republican. I just feel like that should be shouted to the rooftops all the time. Some Republicans approached him and basically said, if you get impeached, we don't have the votes to keep you in office. Which is it's just never happened. Hannah, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
I'm painting a picture of Cosette from Les
There you
Mis.
go. Yeah, so yeah, Nixon resigned. The resignation means that Gerald Ford was now the president. So if we could go to the next slide. Ford had originally not been Nixon's VP. The original VP was Spiro Agnew, and he had resigned to an unrelated corruption issue. So, he had been investigated and charged with criminal conspiracy, bribery, extortion, and tax fraud because he had received kickbacks from contractors during his time as Baltimore County executive and governor of Maryland. He eventually pled no contest to the charges and resigned. And then Ford became Nixon's VP. I don't know exactly
what a strong
how that
office
happens.
of the presidency.
I know,
we
right?
had.
Right.
So, fun fact, Ford is the only president in United States history to become president without having been on a presidential election ballot.
That is interesting.
Yeah. I just think that's, I don't know. I just think that was the,
I mean,
that's
imagine
really-
being
no,
him
no,
and
it is
everyone's
really-
like, "Oh, you were the president." He's like, "Well, see,
I wasn't
here's
supposed
the
to
thing.
be.
I wasn't supposed to be vice president. I
This was a
wasn't supposed to be president.
I'm not supposed to
I
be
didn't
here.
want to do this."
Yeah. Well, he probably did, because on September 8th, he pardoned Nixon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, and that was like a month after he became the president. So yeah, Nixon never faced any jail time or any,
Of course.
other than losing his like entire career, which to me is not the same thing as jail time.
No, everyone treats it like it is,
It's not.
but it's not.
It's not at all. Especially since, like, I think literally everyone else who was implicated in this did serve jail time, except him.
And there's actual like proof
There is
that
so much
he
proof.
conspired
Exactly.
with this.
Exactly. Yeah, so we're starting to wrap up now. So if we go to the next slide, on January 1st of 75, former Attorney General John Mitchell, former aide Ehrlichman, and former Chief of Staff Haldeman were found guilty of obstruction of justice. Mitchell's on the left, Ehrlichman's on the right, and then Haldeman is the one, like, standing up with Nixon in that picture that was on the video of the smoking gun tape. So I didn't feel like including it here. So if we can go to the next slide. So, like, I mean, it's basically done at this point. Like, legally speaking, Watergate has completed at this point, like, for the most part. All the major players have either been pardoned, they pled guilty, or they have been found guilty of mostly conspiracy, obstruction of justice, stuff like that. So in 77, Nixon does a series of interviews with BBC journalist David Frost. So Nixon was paid $600,000, which is $2.5 million in 2019, plus a 20% share of any profits. Nixon saw these interviews as a way to convince the public that he wasn't involved, because he's the precursor to Donald Trump with the, if you just say it didn't happen, that means that it didn't happen mentality, even in the face of evidence that it did happen. And obviously this didn't work. So it was released in 5 episodes, and part 3 is where we get the most infamous clip out of all of this. So Frost is asking about, like, not like national security, but just like, I guess national security is probably the best allegory to it. So Frost says, quote, "So what in a sense you're saying is that there are certain situations where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something and do something illegal." And then Nixon responds, "Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal."
What?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. It most definitely is.
Uh-huh.
The president doesn't decide
No.
what
he does
is and
not.
isn't legal.
No, he does not. In no context does he do that. Like, really?
What the heck? The president is not above the law.
No, he's not. The problem
He's
is...
just the president.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is...
You're basically a figurehead.
Yeah. So, like, I meant to write this down and I kind of forgot. So this whole scandal was the beginning of Americans not, like, super duper trusting the people in power for obvious reasons. Because before that, you know, obviously people didn't like people who are in charge, because that's just how people are. You're not going to have everybody agree on everything all the time. But, and like, obviously we'd had scandals in the past. We'd had another president impeached by this point, even though it was like 100 years earlier. You know, it's not like everything was...
But still, I mean, there's a reason we have a two-party system.
Yeah. It's just not...
people don't see eye to eye. Like,
yeah,
that's just how it is.
We should have had more than two parties, but again, that's a separate issue. So, but this was the first time, at least in, like, at least like in 2020's collective memory, if that makes sense, this was the first time that people were like, oh, politicians are really corrupt. Like, this was the first thing that really pushed that to the forefront of maybe we shouldn't trust our politicians. Right?
Did no one pay attention to Hamilton? Jesus, people.
Well, we also have a lot of mythology surrounding the Founding Fathers, so no, people did not pay attention to Hamilton. But, because, like, even if you think about JFK, right, who was president, I'm not saying JFK is corrupt, just to preempt this. JFK...
No, he was definitely problematic.
He was super problematic. That's where I was going. He slept with so many women outside of his marriage. It did not get reported on. If that happened post-Watergate, it would get reported on. It does get reported on. It has. We've had somebody tangentially be impeached over it, right? This just... I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. This was the turning point in American politics to where people... started to actually become, like, genuinely critical of politics as a system. Like, as a whole, people were doing that. Because obviously we've had people up until then doing that. It was when people began to really look at the people who were in charge and be like, oh, you guys are shitty.
Well, and you can kind of think about it. I mean, obviously there's, like, video and, like, radio stuff before this time. But still, it's the start of kind of, like, the modern technological age where there's proof of a lot of things. And so the common people... And it's, like, the start of, like, when information spreads so quickly. So, like, it's where, like, the general populace can be critical because they have access to that information now. And it's not just a, like, okay, well, in 3 weeks we'll get a newspaper article about it.
Maybe. Exactly.
A telegraph.
Yeah. Well, because, I mean,
right.
Even, like, the first televised presidential debate had been between JFK and Nixon back in the 60s.
And Nixon looked like
shit.
Idiot.
And they think that was...
because he wouldn't wear makeup, and he was also a sweaty
They
mess.
think that was a huge... I mean, JFK won for a wide variety of reasons over Nixon, but that was a big one, was that JFK didn't look like a zombie, and Nixon did.
Yeah.
You know? Because...
I will say, though, that in these recent presidential debates, Joe Biden looks very sickly next to Trump, only because Trump is so orange that it washes out Joe Biden from all the way across the stage.
You're right.
I know. Oh, it's so bad.
It's like, bro, you need a spray tan.
Yeah.
I know. Someone get Joe in the sun for a little bit.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah. But yeah, Watergate is still just such a big, like... I mean, all of the fucking... Any scandal now, they put gate as a suffix at the end. Like, deflate gate. For the Patriots football thing a few years ago. Like, everything gets a gate stuck on the end of it.
Pizzagate.
Yeah. Pizzagate. Yeah, that's a big one. It's just such... God, I don't even have... Well, one, I'm tired, and then... Like, I should have written this all down because I meant to, and then in my 5 revisions, I forgot. But I think that Nixon's saying when the president does it, that means it's not illegal. I think, personally, that his successors took that to heart a little bit more than maybe they should have. In my opinion. Obviously, yes, that is an incorrect statement. The president is not above the law, but we have seen several presidents who act as if they are above the law. And currently we have a Senate who is enabling that behavior. Again, in my opinion, but what are you gonna do? So, we're almost done.
Everyone should just go watch The West Wing. If you're very disillusioned with life and politics, it will just make everything so much better.
Yeah.
It's a liberal fantasy, I understand. I don't care. I completely subscribe to it. It is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, and then you have to remember
so
to...
well written.
Yeah.
Aaron Sorkin is a fucking genius.
So after all of this happened, we had Ford, and then we had Carter, and then we had Reagan. You know? And there are some people who argue that if this had not happened, we would not have gone on that trajectory. I think that might be a little too simplistic because there are so many different factors that go into everything all the time. But, yeah. It's just
I'm sorry, but there's a part of me that loves Jimmy Carter.
There is. I mean, like, he wasn't, like, that great at, like, a lot of the jobs as a president, but, like, as a person, he doesn't seem terrible. You know what I mean?
He's adorable.
Yeah.
He's just a little peanut farmer from South Georgia.
Yeah. He just also was so ineffective that Reagan got elected, but, like, it's fine.
I mean, yeah, totally. But...
Which, like, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think that, like, Carter wasn't necessarily a reaction to Ford. Reagan was a reaction to Carter. You know, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think Carter was... I mean, he's a little peanut farmer from South Georgia. He was not cut out to be a president.
No.
He's
But-
trying his best.
Yeah. Trying his best.
Even, like, things that he
builds
says
houses
now
on
are
the
kind of, like,
weekend.
just adorable. Like, I want you to be my grandfather
Yeah.
type things.
Yeah. And, like, I feel like, you know, you can
Like,
do
I'm sure
that.
he's got his...
like,
I mean, he does have his problematic things,
Oh.
but...
all of them do.
Everyone is problematic.
Yeah.
Okay, literally, you are problematic. I am problematic.
Oh,
Everyone
100%.
Yeah. Like,
accept it, embrace it, change it.
yeah.
That's
Exactly.
the point.
Okay, so we're almost done. So, Nixon died on April 22nd, 1994, which was 17 days after Kurt Cobain. So, like, no one really noticed that Nixon died because they were still focused on Kurt Cobain.
Because Kurt Cobain is
Can
more
I
important.
also say something about this picture that we're looking at?
Yes,
Doesn't this look like a really, really shitty Simon and Garfunkel
it
cover band?
does. Yes.
Like, they would just play it on, like...
I just like how the one guy looks
boring.
totally stoned, and then...
That's
Frost,
why,
yeah.
why he looks a little, Paul Simon-y.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Let me finish yawning. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. So we're doing a jump to 2005. So, Woodward and Bernstein, who were the articles, I'm tired, who were the writers for all of those Washington Post articles. You know, throughout that whole time, they kept saying, like, according to sources, or sources said. That was one source. And they refused to give up this source. His code name was Deep Throat.
Was Deep Throat.
Oh, God.
So, it's gross. The managing editor of the Post actually came up with that nickname, and he chose it specifically because it, quote, alluded to the deep background status of the information and the widely publicized 1972 pornographic film Deep Throat. So it's literally named after a porno, which is why I feel so gross saying that. Ugh, it's gross. Anyway.
Like, of
you
all
guys ever
the
watch-
code names you could give, that's what you choose?
I know. What, Hannah?
Did you guys ever watch, The Fairly Odd Parents?
Yes,
Yes.
of course.
You know that episode where, I don't even know what happens in it, but that girl, Tootie, is like a spy or something, and she calls herself Deep Toot.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway, I just thought I would bring that up.
They also, you guys have seen The Keepers, right? On Netflix?
Yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have, like, a former police officer, I think, who, like, they interview him on camera, but he's, like, severely shrouded, and they edit his voice and everything. They call him Deep Throat, too. Which I don't like it.
Why? There are so, like, I'm sorry, but if I was going to be giving up information or, like, being interviewed and they were concealing my identity and I learned that they were calling me Deep Throat, I'd be like, no, hold on. Okay. I get to come up with my
I don't
nickname.
consent.
I'm either going to be the Cobra or the Raven. You can pick.
It's just, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so they refused to give him up until 2005. A former FBI associate director named Mark Felt came forward and stated that he was in fact Deep Throat, and Woodward and Bernstein later confirmed. So Felt is actually mentioned in the Smoking Gun tape as someone that Nixon can, like, rely on. And he's the one who followed up Pat Gray as the FBI director because, you know, he had to quit because he destroyed evidence. So, yeah. So, yeah, we do know who that is. We didn't know until 2005, though, when he was about to die, basically. So, just for the last little thing. So there were, like, more scandals under the umbrella heading of Watergate. So there were those massive campaign finance issues that I mentioned earlier. And then there was Attorney General John Mitchell's wife. So we're going to go to the last slide. This is Martha Mitchell.
That is some hair.
This was the most
it.
70s picture of her that I could find. So this is the one that we
Look at
went
those
with.
eyebrows.
Wearing
I know.
House dress? I hope she
I don't
is.
know. Probably. So, yeah. Just as a refresher, because as I've said 15 times.
Oh my god, she's wearing a bow.
Yes, she
She's
is.
got a bow in her hair.
And look at her earrings. They're amazing.
I know. Her earrings are two chandeliers
Yes.
and a bow.
Yes.
I
Like a
want
little
those
schoolgirl.
earrings.
Yes. So, just as a refresher, because we've gone through 15 different white men, and they're all the same person. John Mitchell was Nixon's AG, and then he had resigned to become head of CREEP, which was the committee to re-elect the president. So, his wife was a political celebrity named Martha. So, in 1970, she gained instant fame by saying on TV that anti-Vietnam War demonstrators were, quote, very liberal communists. So she just, like...
Okay.
It sounds like my father.
Yeah. So she just jumped to the top of, like... I don't even know how to phrase it. Just, like, Republican awareness, I guess. So, these are just some fun facts about her. She had met the Queen of England and refused to curtsy. She would call reporters...
Honestly, though.
No, I know.
Good for
yeah,
her.
I know. That's the thing, like, I don't like her politics.
Suck it, colonizers.
Yeah, I hate her politics, but, like, I want to talk to her as a person just because she sounds so fascinating. So she would call reporters and late-night talk shows to, like, dish about SCOTUS justices that she didn't like. She would routinely eavesdrop on her husband's conversations, which, like, I fucking would, too.
Same.
Her nickname was the Mouth of the South.
Okay.
And opinion polls placed her as the most popular speaker in the Republican Party after Nixon. Which, like, that's crazy. So,
I love
and
it.
then, like, just as a comparison to today, some people today compare her status to that of Kellyanne Conway's husband, George. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like, yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I get
No.
it.
Okay, so
he speaks out all the fucking time against Trump. All of his
Yes.
tweets are so anti-Republican
Yes.
agenda.
This is
okay,
how-
I just want to say
This
one
is
thing really
how
quick.
far removed from politics I am. Like, I honestly didn't
So-
know he existed.
So,
So,
do you know who Kellyanne Conway is? Real quick, I just...
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Just for people who don't know...
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah,
though?
go ahead.
When I talk about Republicans, I'm talking about the Trump administration. I'm not talking about like what Republicans used to be.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I can see the point behind some Republican policies, and
Yeah,
I don't know, but
they're
like
not all pure evil, you know? Like,
no, but
just the ones that want
but
to take
now
away
it's
people's
really
rights.
been perverted.
Allie and I were talking about this the other night. There's a difference between Trump supporters and Republicans.
Yes.
I agree.
100%.
So anyway,
Yeah.
It's like when people talk about, like, the far left versus, like, Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Like,
similar.
they...
It's similar, but it doesn't have that same connotation to it, I don't think.
it's like
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know,
talking
but...
about liberals and then talking about people who want to bring back like Stalinism.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's put it that
yeah.
way.
I think that's
Yeah.
a better description.
Yeah, that's much more accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty far left. It's not like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and so just in case people don't know, so Kellyanne Conway, what is she? Was she like a press secretary? Like, what the fuck is Kellyanne Conway? Like, what is her job?
Isn't she the press secretary?
He's
Or
gone
was she
through
just,
like
an advisor?
17. I'm
I don't
I'm
know.
gonna Google it
Okay.
real quick.
I'm looking it up.
She was, whoops, I put Jellyanne. That's not correct. She is a former like White House. She was just a consultant. Okay, cool. So I couldn't, he's gone through so many different people I couldn't fucking remember.
She looks like the
She's
devil.
the one who coined the phrase alternative facts.
Uh,
Yeah. And the one who looks like she wants to eat your soul and is terrifying. Her husband, George, hates Trump and
Yeah.
constantly tweets and gives speeches about how much he hates Trump. So, initially, I'll get into this later. Initially, Martha likes Nixon, right? The further we get into this, that stops for reasons that I'm about to explain. So, at some point, even before the break-in, right, Martha began complaining to her media contacts that the campaign was engaging in dirty tricks. Which also, I just remember this. This is a small detour. So, this whole escapade, I suppose, is mentioned in the Watergate Wikipedia article, which is how I did not know that this happened until I was going through the Wikipedia article to get like an outline for my notes. Her Wikipedia article is all about her husband. And it makes me really mad. Like, all of this...
I hate that.
This is the Frog Boys all over again.
It's just really... It's not a good Wikipedia article. I got a lot of this from... Crap, I forgot to cite it. It's from a different article. And... Yeah, just the Wikipedia page on her is really bad because it talks about her husband. Like, I didn't...
She is her own person.
Yeah, well, then it didn't give any context as to why she would have media contacts. You know what I mean? Like, it just said she had a favorite reporter. But I was like, why does she have a favorite reporter? She's the wife of the Attorney General. I don't think that that's a normal thing to have. So then I had to look up more information for background because it just didn't make any sense to me.
Well, I mean, she was a very public figure.
Exactly. That's the thing. She was a super public... She was the second most popular speaker after the motherfucking president.
Well, no, I mean, even besides that, if as the wife of the Attorney General, she would still be a very public figure.
She would, but you can be
at a lot of events.
Quiet public figure. You know what I mean? It just seemed odd to me that she would have like a favorite reporter.
I definitely agree.
You know, it was just they should have put more. Her Wikipedia article sucks ass. That's the moral of that little tangent. So yeah, at some point,
my calzone is here. We need to wrap this shit up.
I'm almost done. So at some point, as I said, at some point before the break-in, she began complaining to media contacts that the campaign was engaging in dirty tricks. I don't know when exactly this happened, but it was before the break-in. So she and her husband were actually in California during the burglary, but Martha was kind of suspicious of her husband's involvement for obvious reasons, because he super duper was. And so she remained in California while John returned to DC to do damage control. So on June 22nd, which was 5 days after the burglary, Martha made a phone call to Helen Thomas, who was her favorite reporter, and told her that she was intending to leave her husband until he resigned from Creep. Okay? So while they were... I know. So while they were...
It's just every time I gotta...
I know. That's why, like, one of the other, like, acronyms is just CRP, which would still be Creep, but I wrote it out CREEP every time just because I thought that was better. So yeah, while they were having this conversation, the phone call just ended, like super duper abruptly. And so, you know, she's staying at a hotel because obviously they don't live in California. And so Thomas called the hotel back, and whoever picked up the phone told her that Martha was indisposed, which, like, she'd literally just been talking to her. So...
No, thank you.
Yeah, so Thomas then called John, Martha's husband, who said that she was fine. Which, again, he's in DC and she's in California, so how the fuck would he know that? Thomas claimed that someone had taken the phone out of Martha's hand while they were having their conversation, and that Martha had said, "You just get away," like as if she was trying to shoo somebody. And then they could not get a hold of her for a couple of days. And so a few days after this happened, a different reporter named Marcia Kramer tracked Martha down to a country club in New York, which, again, opposite side of the country from California. Martha had been severely beaten. She proceeded to give several...
Oh my God.
Yeah, she proceeded to give several interviews in which she explained that she had been held captive in the hotel after this phone call to Helen Thomas. Before her husband had left California, he had enlisted their security guard, a man named Steve King, who was a former FBI agent, to prevent her from learning anything about the break-in and from contacting reporters. Because for all her personality, she was the biggest gossip in DC, and they knew that if she knew something, she would tell. Right? So King had pulled the phone cord out of the wall and begun to beat her. And just as a note,
oh my God.
Steve King is now Trump's ambassador to the Czech Republic.
What the hell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Martha attempted to escape, like, over the balcony, but she was caught and physically accosted by 5 different men, and she was left needing stitches.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This next part, I'm going to get in. So Nixon's lawyer was summoned. I don't know why he was in California. And he decided to call for a doctor to inject her with tranquilizer. So this little tidbit was in the Wikipedia article, and its source was from a podcast that I didn't have time to listen to. So I don't know the accuracy of that exact statement, because I don't understand why Nixon's lawyer would be in California with the AG, well, the head of the re-election committee's wife. That logistically doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know the accuracy. She was given tranquilizers, and then carted across the country. Like, that is a fact. I just don't know specifically if Nixon's lawyer was involved, because that just doesn't make sense to me logistically. And I didn't have time to listen to the podcast. I could be completely wrong.
Well,
we're going to move on.
If they're all corrupt,
I mean, they are.
There's
it just,
good chance.
I just don't understand why Nixon's lawyer would be there while they're dealing with the fallout of the break-in. That just doesn't
I wonder
make
if
sense
it's
to me.
like someone from his like team of lawyers.
That would make more sense instead of his personal lawyer. It just didn't quite.
Yeah.
It just seemed like an odd detail. Regardless of that, she had definitely been beaten, drugged, kidnapped, and left at this country club in New York. So, and then obviously she, as I said, she had given this information in a series of like interviews with reporters, which was then obviously published in newspapers. So Nixon's aides tried to paint her as an unreliable alcoholic and suggested that she was actually in a psychiatric facility. So she did have a drinking problem and a drug problem. But these things had still happened, right? But this smear...
I'm sorry, but a drinking problem and a drug problem doesn't result in you being beaten.
Exactly. Well, they were...
Like, you can't just beat yourself.
Exactly. And I mean, they were saying she had made the whole thing up and that she hadn't even been beaten.
I know. The reason they probably said that was to paint her as, like, a woman of ill repute.
That was exactly
You
what they
know,
were
they're
doing.
just saying she's hysterical.
Exactly. This smear campaign worked so well that most of her family, including, I think, all but one of her children, just completely and totally abandoned her. Which, again, she had a massive drinking and drug problem that sometimes resulted in her having, I don't want to say violent episodes, but not fun to be around her episodes, if that makes sense. So I'm sure that played into it as well. I don't think it was strictly this event that caused that break from her family, but this certainly did not help. And it was definitely the tipping point for her relatives. And so this happened in 1972. It wasn't until James McCord, who was there, corroborated her story in 1975 that people actually believed her. So it was 3 years that people did not believe her, cut her off from her family, just smeared her for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, after she physically recovered, she initially tried to defend her husband because I don't think she knew that he told King to stop her from talking to reporters. Because I cannot imagine her defending him if that was the case. And she believed him to be like a fall guy in the situation and like in the burglary, and she encouraged him to turn against Nixon. Obviously, eventually she figured out that he was in fact involved, and they separated in September of 1973. But it wasn't her choice. He basically abandoned her. Didn't say goodbye, didn't tell her that he was leaving. She just woke up and he was gone. And then they basically never spoke ever again. And then, John was found guilty of perjury, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy in January of 1975. So Martha, unfortunately, she ended up dying of myeloma on May 31st, 1976. So, like, her last few years were just hell.
Yeah.
So just a couple more little things. The last one of which is probably going to piss you guys off, but I have to say it. So, there is, like, an unofficial, like, psychiatric effect named after her. So, like, the Martha Mitchell effect is when a mental health professional or a doctor labels a patient's accurate perception of real events as delusional. Yeah.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, so it's when doctors...
I hate that.
Yeah, it's basically when doctors are gaslighting patients and telling them, no, that didn't happen.
Oh, you mean all the doctors who tell me that all of my pain is made up and in my head?
Yes.
And I'm
That
a
exactly.
hypochondriac?
That exactly.
Because that pisses me off.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't imagine pain for 15 years of my life. Thank you very much.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't think that that's like actually like a phrase that is used by medical professionals. It's just one of those weird like pop psychology things that like
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And so finally, Nixon told Frost in one of his interviews that Martha had been a distraction to John in a, like, no one was minding the store kind of way, and stated that if it hadn't been for Martha Mitchell, there'd have been no Watergate, which I don't think is true, but Nixon has to blame somebody other than himself. So what are you going to do? And then finally, John...
Wait.
Yes.
How was she a distraction?
I don't know. He did not expand on that.
Also, it's not like she's the one who sent, 3 plainclothes police officers to go find your idiotic
Find
boys.
your shitty CIA agent.
Exactly.
Like, I'm sorry, why?
Former CIA? Yeah, clearly you did not make the cut.
No, he just didn't like her. A lot of people didn't at this point, And then finally, John Mitchell, her husband, said, Jesus Christ.
I've been eating that calzone that I spoke of previously.
So, after he was sentenced to prison, he said, this is the last thing I'm going to say on Watergate, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. They could have sentenced me to spend the rest of my life with Martha Mitchell.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
boy.
Yeah. Okay. And that is Watergate.
Excellent.
Yeah. I tried to be as thorough as I could while also not bogging us down and making this a 4-hour-long thing. So, like, I know I missed stuff, but I tried to cover everything that was, like, important, and then I wanted to talk about Martha for obvious reasons. So, yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
As I said at the top, like, I just wanted to talk about a political scandal where, like, people actually faced consequences. Because that hasn't happened in a very long time. And, yeah, this is basically just the start of, like, the corrupt politician era of American politics, which we are thoroughly entrenched in at the moment.
And it pretty much hasn't stopped since then.
Exactly. So, yeah. Plus, I just thought it was... And, like, I didn't know most of this before I did this research. I knew there was a burglary, but again, I thought burglary meant theft. And I knew that Watergate was the hotel, and I knew that it was against the DNC, but, like, I didn't know, like, the specifics. Or, like, just how damning the obvious, like, just how obvious the evidence was against Nixon. Like, it is blatantly obvious, and yet this man is still trying to say that he was not involved, and it's just so reminiscent of everything Trump has ever said. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to be cheered up, go watch the episode, I don't remember what episode it is, of Monty Python's Flying Circus where the guy's trying to report a burglary. It's very good.
Yeah. Or if you want, like, faith in politics, go watch Parks and Rec, because their version of politics is so much nicer than ours.
Or The West Wing!
What?
Or The West
Wing. Yes.
God, it's so good.
Yeah. So... that's pretty much all I have. This took me for fucking ever, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, we still don't have an ending, which, as Hannah said, is giving her anxiety. So.
It's not so much anxiety as, like, disappointment.
No, I understand. Yeah. So, yeah, does anybody have any just, like, final thoughts or... things you realize.
I'd really like to eat my calzone.
That's fair. Okay.
Politics are trash, men are trash, end of story.
Yeah, I mean, that can just be our theme song at this point,
And if you want to come at me with you're not all men, I am aware.
Do you know what my response to that is? It's not all men, but it is almost always men.
Yes.
Like... That's always my response.
Look, women can be trash too, and I'm not discounting their behavior. Yeah, but
everybody can be trash, but statistically,
statistically, you're more trash. Never mind, that's not even. I'll just shut up.
I told you that Maisie, like, the only living creature that Maisie doesn't want anything to do with is straight white guys, right? It's only straight white men. She hates them. Everyone else wants to be their very best friend. Straight white guys, not interested.
That is fair.
Yeah, totally fair, and it makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, then. Yeah. Day after the election, go do self-care if needed. If somehow this is a celebratory day, go celebrate. I want to leave both
Please.
options open because I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen.
Might be good, might be bad, might be
both. I don't know.
Might be, we don't know yet.
Yeah, it might be. We don't know yet. Like,
might just be Tina Belcher noises.
yeah. Yeah.
Please don't let it be Tina Belcher noises.
Yeah, please don't let it be Tina Belcher noises.
That's been me for the last 4 years, and I don't know how much longer I can take it.
Yeah. But yeah, just as a reminder, if you do need somebody to talk to, our DMs are always open. The email's always open.
Shannon will be the best at answering, I promise. I am trash at answering things, but I also have experience in, like, mental health care
We all do.
things.
I know a lot about politics, but I really, I'm such a, the word Luddite comes to
Yeah,
mind.
you are. You really are.
I don't understand technology and it scares me and therefore I don't like it. So I don't know how to use the things.
Yeah.
If you ever follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I have not posted in about, I want to say 4 or 5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's fine.
Except for the other night for the
Yeah.
thing. And that was really hard to do. I had to take a screenshot. It was a mess.
She had to do a lot of things,
Yeah.
and it was
It was
Yeah.
a hard time for her.
Whereas with me,
I wasn't there.
my phone is always on. The noise is not on. So if you message me at like 10 o'clock at night, I'll be asleep. So,
I just have this problem where I think that I've answered things.
Yeah, I know.
And then I
And then you
didn't
didn't.
actually answer them because I am one of those people who has to think through my response so that it's like perfect. And then I'm like, okay, now I've got the perfect response. So I already sent it in my brain, but I didn't
yeah, I don't
because
do
I never
that.
actually typed it out.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you have to spam message me, that's totally fine. But yes, I do care about people.
Yeah. And like,
I have a fair amount of experience with like having to talk people out of panic attacks and things like that.
same. Yeah.
If-
so.
And like actual, I am not a certified therapist.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Don't
None
come
of us
for
are.
me. But actual like semi-professional experience. It's not just me being a therapist to my friends. I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I just hope, I'm just shouting into the void right now, but I hope everything doesn't end up terrible. That's the best I can do right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Fingers crossed at this point.
Yeah.
And
I hope you voted. If
Yep.
you didn't vote, I hope you feel guilty
Yep.
about it.
All right.
Let my Catholic guilt pour over you. Wait, I had a situation. Oh. So my dad can see my bank account only because sometimes I'm so poor I can't feed myself. But right now it's not one of those times. It's a good time right now. But anyway, I texted him the other day and gave him a breakdown of every like penny I spent the past week because I had spent a lot of money on things that were like really important. And then I was like, please don't freak out on me, blah blah blah. And he's like, have I ever freaked out on you? And then he was texting me and I was like, I guess I'm too Catholic for my own good. And he said, and with your spirit.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So
All right.
you made me this way.
And with that, I'm going to say goodbye because I need to go feed my dog and eat dinner.
All right,
Yes,
Toodles.
my calzone is literally calling my name.
All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to The Triad. Our music is by Scott Buckley. Our audio is recorded by our sound engineers, Craig Bott and Audrey Credo.
If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as The Triad Podcast. Our website is thetriadpodcast.wordpress.com. There, you can find information about our latest episode, including the show notes and sources.
We're also on Patreon as The Triad. Currently, all Patreon funds will go towards the cost of hosting the show. Each tier has its own rewards, but every patron receives our undying gratitude. Do you have comments, questions, or stories? Email us at thetriadpod@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive.